Siam na siaya, I na tlwalmoch. Vanessa quan na squeech I qualasalton squeeze to neats mathguiam. Ami tsap quat wheelam I tanash mathguiamal tamo tush amet tas hunt caminum can. I tlu tush alle quatst tus quammich I desilil with hal masteo. Ni tsend kiltam nisieya quants hunt caminum can. Sasu tu qua ait quath qualoen. Sta quina siwanel satsamson near to swallow. I hilaxto to huinal I mich netten. Siatalaton to swallow hu I namech with E to E. Quan ewan awel quath no wayel. Heitzapka.
Hello, my name is Coasselton. My English name is Mac Paul. This is Vanessa Campbell, and we are from Musqueam. We are so honored to be here with you on behalf of our community, our elders, and our leadership, and welcome you to the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We'd like to thank the Vancouver International Film Festival for creating space for this important work at their 40th anniversary. We hope you enjoy the show. Heitzapka.
Oseam Tanoyap, Titaichama Queen Kwashamin, Rebecca Queensna, Skopmishchin. Yotwan heart since Quawan Quistlack, no more yap 80, Nati come alike, Skopmish Ohomer. Hello, everybody. My true name is Titaichama. My English name is Rebecca, and I am from the Squamish Nation. It is such good feelings in my heart to welcome you to our sacred territory we call Kamkamalai, also known as Vancouver, Squamish Nation's own sacred territory. I'd like to start us off in the proper way by singing a paddle song to bring us all in this giant canoe, if you will, all together with good feelings and good thoughts. Oseam. Chaislokam, Iayosh, Chaislokam, Iayosh, Takahot, Chaislokam. Oseam Tanoyap. Honor your canoe, honor your neighbor's canoe. Stay safe, everybody. Oseam.
So I'm Gabriel George. Tashwalap na akwetal na seam na seya. Tashnemish at Tasalewatash, Huelmuch. To all of you, my dear friends and family, we are the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Tanawel East Itish at Siwan Ash at Humathguiam, e Skopmish, e Tsleil-Waututh. Today, we have gratitude for the ancestors of the Musqueam people, the Squamish people, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. Heitzep ewish seam. Heitzep seam.
Hello, my name is Charlene Alec. I am elected council for Tsleil-Waututh Nation. On behalf of the children, the youth, the elders, and our matriarch at Tsleil-Waututh, we'd like to raise our hands to the work that the Vancouver International Film Festival is doing and hosting international filmmakers from around the world. And we'd also like to congratulate you for the participation in the 2021 VIF and welcome you. Heitzap Awith.
Excellent. Once again, we're grateful for that warm and beautiful welcome from the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Welcome back. How's everyone feeling? Good? I feel like everyone's got popcorn right now. Good? That's great. Well, it's like watching a hit movie here, this next panel. And it's one that Tony and I love for a lot of different reasons. I think it's the third time we've done this kind of concept, but it's the first time we've ever focused on trailers and promos. I've introduced these people a couple times already, so I won't spend much time, but your host is Tony Scudlari. Give him a big round of applause. And we have Brian Vickers from Disney, Ruben Sears from Silo, and Evelyn Garcia from Wildcard. Take it away.
Thank you, Rob. First of all, I am constantly, every time I see that welcome, I am so moved by it. I mean, it is so important that I think that we have that recognition and that we understand that we are on ancestral, traditional, unceded lands. And the graciousness of them to also be singing for us, which again shows the importance of music. It just moves me every time. So I'm just very grateful to be here, to be with all of you, and I appreciate your being here. I'm glad you're all eating popcorn because one of the things that obviously goes with popcorn are great movies, and with great movies come great trailers. And we are fortunate that, as part of the art of music supervision, which I think doesn't get enough light, and this is something Rob and I have talked about, is the brilliance of the artists that are here that do music supervision for trailers, because trailers I don't think are given the due that they should because of the work that you all do. So first of all, what I'd like to do is go down and have you each tell us a little bit about your journeys, how you got into music supervision for trailers, because I think it's really instructive to hear each of you have had such different paths that I think will really inspire our folks who are here. So I'm going to go from my right to yes, and so let's start with Evelyn, and then move on down the line.
Hi guys, I am Evelyn. I am the music director at a trailer house called Wildcard Creative Group in Culver City in Los Angeles. Honestly, the way I kind of fell into trailer music supervision, I didn't even know it was an option when I was in school. I originally wanted to be a music journalist, and that's what I was going to school for. I just wanted to write album reviews and listen to cool new music all the time. But when I was in school, it was like right when the digital era sort of started making its turn, and people didn't anticipate print surviving that, nor did they think that people were going to purchase articles or any magazine, any journalism online. Everything was free and it was up on blogs. So I had to kind of quickly shift and figure out what I wanted to do. I started interning at the Viper Room on the Sunset Strip, and I learned about venue management there. I originally reached out to the editor-in-chief at a magazine called High Voltage, and she told me that she didn't have a journalist internship, but she had a internship because she was the booking agent there. So I learned all about venue management, and then I discovered what live sound was, and I thought it was one of the coolest things to watch these guys do all of the technical aspect and mix and master in real time, essentially, during these live shows. And I thought it was so cool that I decided to get another bachelor's degree and learn about audio engineering. So I decided I was going to be a producer, and I wanted to work in the studio with artists and be behind the board and do all of that cool stuff. So I got to do that for a little bit. And in the process of doing it, I realized that I liked it, but I didn't 100% love it. And I was still very young, and I'm a very passionate person, and I just wanted to love what I did full-heartedly. And I met up with a college professor who was just like, well, what if you do A&R? What if you do this? And was just sort of throwing different career options at me. And eventually he was just like, what if you were a music supervisor? And I was like, what is that? He was just like, well, you get to pick the music in your favorite TV shows and movies. And I was like, wait, I always thought it was an editor who did that. And he was just like, no, like, let me put you in touch with some people. And he put me in touch with a wonderful company called Extreme Music, and it's a production music library owned by Sony ATV. And I ended up getting a job there. And my first person I ever worked with was this guy over here. And Tony was really great. And when I started at Extreme, I learned about what the sync world was. I learned about sync and licensing, writing contracts, negotiating deals, what production music was, what trailer music was, and the fact that there was also different medias of music supervision. In my head, I only ever thought of TV and film, but I learned that there was the commercial world, there was video games, there was trailers, and I was very lucky to have that job, because at that job, I got to work with different types of medias and sort of build up that business. And as I did that, I got to work with different music supervisors, and I learned how they worked and the specifics that it takes to be a music supervisor for each media. And eventually I landed in trailers, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I love orchestral music, and at the time that was a very big focus in trailers, and I was just like, this is so cool. I get to work with composers, and I kind of fell in love. And eventually I started doing informational interviews with my clients and kind of asking them, how did you get into this? How can I make the transition? And I very luckily spoke to a lot of wonderful people, one of them being Todrick Spalding, who ended up hiring me at Mob Scene and kind of gave me, a playground to just learn and be a sponge and intake everything I could. And from then on, I just kind of started listening to music, pitching music, and ended up at Wildcard.
Ruben?
Hey guys, my name is Ruben Sears. I work at Silo Music, which is a boutique sync shop. We have a management arm and a publishing arm, and I run the trailer and promo department. I'm going to do the quickest version of this story that I can, I promise. Moved to LA after college to be an actor. One of my temp jobs obviously was waiting tables. I met a guy who was an editor at a trailer shop. We became friends. I needed a place to live. I lived in his guest room. I would make him mix CDs all the time. And he's like, you're really into music. And I'm like, isn't everybody? Like, yeah. So he's like, we need an assistant at this company I work at named Buddha Jones. You should go for this job. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but sure, because I'm not booking any acting gigs, so let's do this. Didn't get the job. A year later, Ruben, it's my friend Ray. You should come back in. We need another assistant. Great. Didn't get the job. Cut to, I become a wedding DJ/MC. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Woo! And I do that. I'm listening to music. I'm learning how to program music for events. And then my buddy Ray calls me for the third time and goes, hey, you should come in for this job again. So I go in again, and finally I meet with the three owners of the company separately, and they're like, Ruben, you've been in here before. Ray won't shut up about you. He says you're great with music and all this stuff. Why should we hire you? And I said, well, and I didn't know anything about movie trailers other than I liked them. But I said, it seems to me that a music supervisor for a trailer is responsible for finding music which matches the tone of this film, to picture, or finding a replacement for a song that maybe they can't get, or a song that shifts the tone of how they want to market the movie to something like, adjacent. And I said, I DJ weddings and MC weddings, and I have to talk with the bride and the groom beforehand, learn their story, help. Not everyone is into music like I am. So they're coming to me, I need to come up with music for their first dance, their cake cut, their grand entrance, their, all these musical moments in the most important day of their lives. And so in the interviews, I said, I think I'm already a music supervisor. I just do it live with a microphone. And they all just were like, wow. I got the job. And I've been doing it for 10 years now, left acting behind. I got to work with Evelyn when she was at Extreme. I get to work with Brian and Evelyn doing remixes, which is what Silo does a lot of, in addition to finding new composers and artists and helping them make trailer music. And extremely grateful for my career and to be here with all of you guys.
I guess I'll round it out, since I'm the third. What's up, everybody? My name is Ryan Vickers. I am originally from Birmingham, Alabama. And I always kind of lead with that because it explains a little bit about, my personality growing up and everything. My mom she was a singer, but not like professionally. Everyone grew up kind of doing, you're in the choir, you're in the band. My mom grew up doing church singing and everything. So it's only natural that when I turned like old enough to walk, she threw me in the church choir, right? And my dad, he was in like the high school marching band. And you know those people who like will always like recall events as if it was the greatest thing ever, but it's like, hey man, that was a long time ago. That's how he was, with just drumming. Like you would think this dude plays on weekends, but he played in high school, the snare. But they were both very big on get in music and, just kind of stay close to this. So I started out in church choir and I really ended up learning and loving music at a super early age. When I went to college, I decided to major in it. I was a vocal jazz major. And after I got out of college, I'm like, okay, cool. What do we do? And then I went back to school, sort of similar to what Evelyn mentioned. I ended up doing, I went to school the second time to learn audio engineering and, how do you run a studio? How do you speak that? What's a compressor? What's a limiter? All of that kind of stuff. All right, cool. Moved to LA in 2008. And then it was, okay, what do I do with these two incredibly random degrees that probably don't pay much? All right. Just being real. And so I got out and it was actually kind of convenient/inconvenient where in 2008, the writer's strike had just started. And that was actually very big because a lot of places that I probably would have looked to work weren't bringing people in. I ended up getting an internship at a TV production company, which was doing reality TV. That's like back when there was kind of a little bit of a boom. So that's actually where I kind of got my start. I was an intern for a TV production company called Buna Murray. Y'all might know him from, Bad Girls Club and Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Real World, all that jazz. So they were like OG, reality TV stuff. I'm in there and I'm learning because it's a difference from going to school to learn sharps and flats, all that kind of stuff, to actually learning, oh, that's what a license is. Oh, okay. Oh, what is this? And, like learning just the entire side of what would be, music supervision. So I was there for a couple years. After my time there, I was kind of looking around, trying to figure something out. And the funny thing is, Evelyn mentioned Todrick. This dude is, he's kind of a legend. I applied to a job for a trailer house. Did not really, like Ruben said, I was like, I know trailers. I get to the movies early and they play them and they're loud and they're dope. Cool. And that was like the extent of it. But yeah, I kept applying to this place. I didn't get it. Like a year later, Todrick randomly hits me up like, hey, somebody's going on vacation. Are you, around and available? I'm like, let's do it. I ended up doing a temp stint there just for like a couple days. Somebody else went on vacation. I did it again. And next thing I know, they brought me on full time. I was there for a couple years and yeah, long story short, now I'm over at a little company called Disney. So that's kind of the run of it.
What I think is so great about all your stories is you've come from different experiences, all with a passion for music. And I wanted to have people hear that so they know that there is no specific organizational ladder to becoming a music supervisor, that there is opportunity based on your willingness to learn, based on your willingness to take that passion and make it into something really special. And that's what you all do, and that's why I wanted to have you here. The other thing that I was fortunate enough to be on a panel with Ruben and with Evelyn on for Canadian Music Week. And Ruben said something, Brian said something.
I was like, what?
This is good.
Sorry, Brian said something which really just I thought was so impactful in terms of sort of like the work of being on trailers, which is that it's very different from working on a film and TV show because you are very, very much involved. Not just, when you're doing, and I'm not denigrating it because I've done music supervision and I do music supervision for film and TV. But what we do on that side is obviously pick music for a scene. You basically are creating a story, a 3-act story, which you're basically helping to tell that as a storyteller. So your role in some ways is more elevated because you are part of that storytelling structure, which I think is really, really cool. What I'd love to talk about is sort of about how not only are you choosing songs, but you're involved with the sound design really intently on the sound design. It's not like just you have someone who's involved in that, who's working collaboratively. You guys are doing it. That is really, I think, amazing work that you're able to do it because I saw a cue sheet for one of the trailers that we were doing, and I've told this before, and there's like 150 cues for a 4-minute piece of a trailer, which is unbelievable. On a TV show, 150 cues would be what you'd probably have over the course of a 10-episode season. So when you think about how much work they are doing, that's why I'm saying these people do not get enough props. So that's me from sort of like, the outside looking at what you do and having much respect for all of you because I know how much work you put into it. So what I want to start off about that, along those lines, is I'm going to start off with Ruben's trailer that he brought us for a new film called Violet. And then what I'd like to do is talk about sort of the music in it and talk about sort of like some of the aspects of it, which I think are really unique to it, which we'll get to after we see the trailer. So if we could run Ruben's trailer for Violet, please.
The way I've always been doing things just doesn't work now. I want to be free.
You're a freak. You're fat. Your hair is gross. You're a baby. You smell. Don't be a bitch. Everyone can see you. You should be full of love. There. Don't you feel better now?
I feel weird lately.
Are you sick?
The committee in your head that tells you that you're a terrible person.
You're nothing.
Just never really noticed it before. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
You're a loser. Are you okay? You're so selfish.
I just don't feel like I'm on top of things.
Loosen up.
The way I've always been doing things just doesn't work now.
You're so beautiful, so delicate, I feel sick.
I've been telling myself to do certain things.
Hey, Sugar Plum. Let it go.
Act a certain way.
There's nothing better than watching her get all excited.
Don't cause a scene.
Or else something bad will happen to me.
How could you be so stupid? Maybe you cast yourself in a part you don't want to play anymore. You're a pretty little flower.
I'm scared to do things differently.
Like a flower.
You're going to fail.
I'm not listening to that voice.
What did you say?
I'm a sucker for the
You'll never find your way back to that kind of freedom.
I don't want to be afraid of some terrible outcome. I want to be free.
This is a huge mistake.
I want to be free.
No one will even want to come near you. You will be alone. Alone. Alone.
I want to be free.
So Ruben, can you talk to us about sort of the creative process without giving any away trade secrets or, the family sauce, right, the secret sauce, sort of like how you went about, when you were approached about this film, how the creative was sort of put together and, how you chose the music that you chose.
Okay, so first off, I work for Silo, which is not a trailer shop that makes the trailers themselves. Silo itself is a company that was sent music. That song, the back end song "Power," is by an artist relatively new and small named Greta Isaac. And their management was like, "What do you think of this stuff?" And we were like, "Well, for trailers, that original song "Power" is not really trailer friendly. All the percussion that you hear in there is from the remix that we did. And that's my job, taking a song and hearing either a lyric that like, ooh, I'm addicted to the power. That's a good trailer lyric. And then creating a remix that fits for trailers. So we got a brief from a trailer shop, Seismic, you guys are familiar with. They're big in the industry. And they were like, we have this indie film. It's about this woman who's, she has this inner voice. And we're looking for like a female empowerment song. And I was like, I got one. And we sent this remix to them. And they, what I think is great about that song in terms of trailers, especially for this audience here, is Greta Isaac is not a superstar. Has anyone heard of Greta Isaac? No one. Okay. Or did I see one hand?
I think we saw a hand.
Okay, one hand. One hand. So like, Greta Isaac landed a song in a huge trailer with Olivia Munn, who I'm sure many of you know. So that's a huge win, and this should all make you feel really good if you guys are hoping to one day get your music in trailers. And I think this trailer is also great in terms of showcasing the power of a lyric. And a trailer, you got 2.5 minutes to convey a lot of information, right? Most time it's a 3-act structure. If we remember what the first act of this trailer was, is a very kind of interesting, not rock, hardly any percussion cue. That was not my decision. That was Seismic. But one of the first pieces of dialogue we hear is like, I feel weird. The main character, the protagonist, feels off. And they found a cue that kind of musically conveyed that. It's a little different than what you would normally hear in like a romantic comedy, because this is not a romantic comedy. And then we had a transitional act 2 where that's that weird cue with some drums thrown in. It's like, okay, this is propelling us forward. And then the turn where we hear the beat come in, ding, ding. Okay, and that's where the power cue comes in. And then we're off to the races, where a lot of times in a trailer, you're going to have the hook, like, I'm addicted to the power, and then instrumental, and then the button. This was actually kind of cool in that they used a lot of the lyrics. You're so beautiful, so delicate, I feel sick. It was just kind of like a great coming together of like, wow, this song really fits this movie. And like, it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it's just like a song saying like, I'm the best. And that's it. And then it's the instrumental, and then they'll hammer that, I'm the best, and you're like, okay, he must be really good, if not the best. So I think that this cue just happened to be one of those, like, which is the way why I wanted to show it today, is like it just, sometimes stuff just fits, and when we saw because I'm not in the bay, I don't work at Seismic, I'm not in the bay with the editor going through the sound effects and whatnot. I'd heard that the trailer finished or was going to finish, and then I saw it with the rest of the world, and I was like, well, that was a really cool trailer. Like, it just, sometimes, like I said, sometimes it just fits. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, and the question, okay, so you work with the management, right, to be able to get the song.
Right, and sometimes, Greta had to approve this remix, because it's, like I said, if you go on Spotify and listen to Power by Greta Isaac, it's much different than what you just heard. And, and an artist has every right to be like, I don't like it, I'm not going to clear it. Thankfully, she did.
Right. So the drums that we hear in there that are part of the song were what you brought to the table.
Yes. We have one of our artists. He started off in the electronic music field. His name's Eddie Thonic. He lives in Germany. And I was like, I want you to make this the maximal version, like, because it's really not. It's pretty acoustic and small. I said, Eddie, I want you to go to the other end of the room with it. 4 blocks over, you know. and he did, and we tweaked it, and I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And I think, what's really interesting is that you created the song, and then obviously Greta and the management had to approve it. Then you had to go to the trailer company, and they had to say, yes, this is what we need for our specific trailer.
Correct. And they could have been like, we needed to tone it down, or we needed to change things, and that happens all the time. I get, requests from these 2 wonderful people, be like, great song, change everything. Like, and you smile and say yes, but yeah, we just sent stems to Seismic for this, and I don't remember us having to do any sort of revisions.
Did you have to then, once the trailer was done, because obviously they're going to be playing with it the way they want to have it work, did you then have to take that trailer to Greta and her management to see, or are you okay with that?
No. Once they signed off on our version, they're kind of under the blanket of, they could do some other crazy stuff with it. It's not on us, but if it were maybe a larger artist, and they said, okay, we're going to approve it conditionally, but we need to see the final cut. That's happened. Yeah, okay. Beyonce. Greta Isaac is great. Yeah. She's not Beyonce yet. So she didn't really have the power to do that. Not yet anyway.
Now, when it comes, and I'm sure this is going to be a question that will be something on the top of a lot of the artists' minds that are here, which is, how do they get their music to you to be considered? Do they have to go through a manager? Do they, go through, can they contact you? Do you have to go through a, obviously manager, but also like a label publisher? How do you get the sources for these, up and coming talented artists to be able to be considered for a cool trailer like this?
And I want you guys to jump in on this, because I feel like this is apt for you guys to talk about as well. But for the people in this room who want to get into trailers, the speed of trailers is insane. Like, I need you to do this remix in 12 hours. And we're like, wow.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday. Because it's so fast, a music supervisor like Evelyn and Brian, when they're looking for music, or they're sending out a search to me, to Silo, to be like, hey, do you have any female empowerment songs? I'm lucky enough to have gotten a level of trust with them that if they're under a deadline that they need music fast, they know that if the deadline is in 2 hours, I'm either going to right away tell them I don't have anything. I'm not going to try to shoehorn in something that they'll listen to and be like, well, I just wasted 2 minutes listening to this and I don't have 2 minutes. Or I'm going to send them stuff in that 2 hours that is going to be good. So for you guys to I think the best way to get your music to music supervisors' hands is to make music that gets represented by a company, either a music library or a boutique like Silo, that the relationship of trust with these music supervisors is already there, so that when I pitch something to these guys, they know it's on point. I'm not going to waste their time, because there's no time. And that's,
yeah, to super piggyback off of that, I think that it all starts with having stuff that speaks emotionally. I think there's a lot of people who are like, how can I get my music in trailers? And I think the quest often is finding supervisors, but in reality, I actually say that I think the quest should be in creating whatever that piece of music is that speaks to someone emotionally, whether it is, hey, I'm not listening to the voice in my head and I'm ready to destroy, the world, the power, you know what I mean? Whether it's that, or what makes people cry, what makes people laugh, what makes people get ready to party, what makes people get ready to fight, whatever it is. And I think that when you have that piece, when you have that locked down, then, the quest can be, all right, now who can we get to take this to the next level? It can be a company like, usually I always recommend that people reach out to a company like Asilo or the folks who can take it to the next level, because more often than not, on our end, we do have to do things to beef it up and to sweeten it to make it work for film. Like, we'll get into the process in a second, but that's one thing that I always, how do I get my music to you? Go to people that can actually make the joint good for trailers. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big piece of it.
And I don't think he's saying that the music isn't good. It's just that trailers is such a specific
Yeah, I was going to say, like, for us, to both of what you guys said, Ruben was talking about how quickly we move, which is so, so key. If we find a cue that we like, we're asking for stems, instrumentals within 10, 15 minutes of us receiving it. So if you guys are going to people like Silo, who are able to pinpoint a specific lyric or a signature sound element that's really special and create a trailerized version of your song, that makes our job significantly easier, because we're like, oh, okay, well, this already has all of the gears that we're looking for. We can start cutting with it right away. And then if we need to make any tweaks, then of course, you get my annoying email being like, hey, I need this in 2 hours.
Hours.
So that actually brings up a question that I wanted to ask for both Brian and Evelyn, which is, when you're working on a film, it could go a year. You're working on a TV show, it could be 3 weeks. How much time do you have from the time you're told about a project to the time to providing the music?
Okay. All right.
It's a hard question.
It's so tricky. Let's look at the process, right? More often than not, one thing I think a lot of people don't understand about trailers is the world that it is. And what that means is usually a studio will say, okay, here's our movie. Movie A. We want to, do a full marketing campaign for it, which would mean, we're thinking a trailer, some TV spots, radio spots, that whole nine. So what a lot of people might not know is, in an effort to do that, they will then reach out to a number of trailer houses. So that might mean, like, I work for Disney, so I only work on Disney projects. But even in the projects that we're working on, they might reach out to, Evelyn's company. They might reach out to 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how big the film is, 5 people to all work on that one trailer. So we're all competing against each other. You know what I'm saying? We're all competing to land that one trailer. So, and maybe this sounds depressing. I hope it doesn't. Please don't let this sound depressing to you as artists. Like, you can get there. But as we're all working on different spots, like, we have music, Evelyn's team is going to have different music, and we're all doing different things. But our client, who, ultimately would be the studio and, the director of the film, et cetera, they're all looking at this. And at any point up this amazing ladder, people can say no. Now, what does the turnaround time look like? As Tony mentioned, that's why we move as fast as we do. Like, when we get an idea, we want to move on it quickly, which is why we always recommend, like, have everything as soon, like, have it available. If you're like, oh, well, I might have an instrumental on my hard drive, like, please, for the love of God, have that thing close by and quick, because when we need
high res.
Yeah. Oh my God, please.
High res,
let it be
please.
high res. We shout out to all the people who know what high res files are, apes and waves. All right, good. Yeah, y'all are out here. And this is why, shameless plug for Disco. We always use Disco for that very reason, but we want to make sure that things are high res, because remember, we're not just listening to it. Our editors are working with it in, whatever they're cutting on, and we want to have the absolute best representation of whatever the track is.
So what I'd like to do now is show Evelyn's trailer. And then that way you can see sort of the work that she's doing, and then we can sort of talk about, now that we've had sort of Ruben's perspective as, creation of the songs, let's see what Evelyn's team has done. So Evelyn, do you want to talk about what the trailer that's coming up that you're doing, that you did?
So the trailer that we're going to show is The Last Stool, which is a film by Ridley Scott. I'm going to let you guys watch it. I don't want to give anything away. It's pretty emotionally intense. So that's all I'll say for right now.
There we go.
There is only one question that matters. Do you swear on your life that what you say is true?
My father told me my life would be blessed with good fortune. I'm married. I was a good wife. And then was judged and shamed by my country.
I say before all of you, I spoke the truth.
A most unspeakable charge has been brought against you.
Jacques Legris entered our home. He attacked me.
The accusation is false.
I am telling the truth.
The truth does not matter. There is only the power of men.
This should be settled quietly. I'm innocent! I request a duel to the death.
If you lose, your wife will suffer dire consequences.
One of us has lied. Let us let God decide.
You do not believe me.
I am risking my life for you.
You are risking my life so you can save your bride.
The penalty for bearing false witness is that you are to be burned alive.
I will not be silent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that next week?
Huh?
Is that how yet?
Say that again?
Next week, right?
Yeah, next week. Go watch it.
So here
guys.
from Mullet Matt Damon, by the way.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Oh, when I saw Mullet Matt Damon, I was like, woof.
I'm here for that mullet.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the reason why I chose this trailer is because it's a little bit different than what Ruben showed. This is not a traditional song. Our mission with this, because it is such a heavy subject matter and it is actually based on a true story, and this did really happen, is how do we bring such heavy emotion to such a heavy subject matter while also being respectful? That was one of the hardest things. Sometimes we get to watch the movies ahead of time, depending on when we come into the movie. This movie was pretty far along into production, so we got to watch the whole thing. And after watching it, it's a really intense story. And we thought about different ways to approach it. Do we use a song? Do we use a really kind of like a timepiece, like an orchestral thing? This is set in medieval times, but also does that date the trailer? You know, a song didn't feel quite right. It felt kind of disrespectful almost. So we decided to actually go with something that was very sound design based. And one of the tasks that we always get asked as trailer supervisors is, can you make this bigger? Can you make this bigger? Even bigger than that. Can you actually push it a little bit further? Not quite big enough yet. There has never been a time when somebody's like, oh, this is huge. Like, can you make it a little less big than that?
I've never seen
it. Never. So with this, we were like, okay, well, if we make this sound really big and massive, it takes away from this very important subject matter at hand. So how do we make this big while also making it feel minimal at the same time? And we worked with a company called Pusher. They have this amazing cue called The Sky Has Vanished. And when we listened to that, this kind of goes back to what you were talking about sound design. We were thinking about how can we create a signature sound for this film, the same way that Inception had the like whoms. And what we did is we found this cue, and if you listen to the actual cue, it sounds very different than how we used it. But we found this beautiful droney pad. And what we wanted you guys to feel as you're watching it is this slow, anxious build. And that was the biggest task, is we didn't want to tell you how to feel. We just wanted you to like gently nudge you in that direction. And then by the end of it, you're watching this and you just feel like a pit in your stomach and you're anxious for this woman. And is she going to survive? And you know, especially right now with all of the female empowerment going on, you see these two men fighting for their pride, forgetting about this woman who was sexually assaulted and might also get burned alive for it because her husband is prideful. So with this, what we did is we really focused on that signature sound design element, and we figured out how to really push that. We stripped the song back a lot, and we used a lot of sound design elements. We also worked with a company called Ghostwriter, and those drums that you hear are actually custom drums that we added to the spot. And then our editor is so brilliant and fantastic at editing. And again, he just created this steady build with that drone that we found. And as you guys are listening to it, you hear it increase in volume as well. And it just gets louder and louder and louder and louder. But what you might not realize is subconsciously underneath that drone, there's actually like a little pulse that is actually supposed to replicate kind of like a little heartbeat. And it gets faster and faster and faster. And as you're listening to it, so does your heartbeat. And you kind of get this feeling of anxiety. And you're just like, what's about to happen? And that's kind of how we did that. You know, with trailers, we have kind of like how Ruben said, there's a 3-act story. We have 2.5 minutes to tell you a story. The first act, we just kind of want to reel you in.
In
Get
a
you
world.
interested. Yeah, in a world.
There it is.
What's about to
Example.
happen. The second act is usually very dialogue heavy, and that's where the meat and potatoes of the story is. That's where we're really starting to give you a lot of the information and the knowledge. And then in the third act is we take all of that away from you, and you're like, okay, well, now you have to go to the theater to find out what happens. And this song did a really beautiful job at that. I think for all of you composers out here, actually, this is a really great example of how music can work as an instrumental and carry so much weight and so much emotion. To touch upon what Brian said earlier, the biggest thing for us is finding that emotion, because we, again, don't want to tell you how to feel and have it just be over your head, because that's annoying and nobody likes that. But we want to nudge you in that direction and encourage you to feel something, and feel something in 2.5 minutes. So you eventually go and watch this trailer. So
Yeah, and then what I think is really cool that you did was, like you said, you have the drums, but you also have that pulse.
Yes.
You know, and having, you know, the foresight to sort of like consider that when you're putting this together, and sort of like, I mean, so obviously you have that sort of conversation, I would assume, with the creative team and say, you know, hey, this I think might work in terms of, you know, getting the effect that we want, and being, you know, again, being respectful of the story that we're trying to tell.
yeah, our creative director and owner of our company, Nick Temple, came up with the idea of those graphics that you guys see. They actually turn into crosses, which are also, you know, symbolic to what's going on in that time period. And it was like a whole religious conversation when you guys watched the film. And we also thought about that sonically, like that transition, and where you're viewing, you know, those scenes through that cross, how does that sound? How do we transition that? Because it's such a smooth transition, but it's also so powerful. And how do we add sound to that without taking away from that really beautiful and powerful visual? So that was also something that we considered.
So I have
as
a
well.
goofy question for you.
Of course.
So because it sounds like Make It Bigger is sort of the 21st century, more cowbell.
Yes.
So the question that I have is, you know, do you like go into a studio, have like, you know, all the speakers around, listen to it and making sure that it sounds big, bring in the account executive or whomever, and then do they tell you, you know, more, bigger, and then you have to sort of like adjust the drums or the pulse to make it do that? And how often do you have to, I mean, is it a process where it's like, you know, you go through it 3, 4, 5 times, 10, 20?
I always get asked to make it bigger. I've never been told like, this is actually, you know, pretty solid. It's always let's make it bigger. Let's make it more impactful. Pre-pandemic, the way that a trailer house works is also very, kind of how Tony had mentioned, very different than TV and film. We do everything in one shop, one editor. We have one editor who does music, graphics, visuals, dialogue, everything. Wow. We don't have a music editor. We don't have a graphics editor. We have a graphics team, and they put together the motion graphics. We have our music team. We pick the music. But we have one guy who puts it all together and is a genius. This was Tim. He's amazing. But traditionally what we do is we pitch the music. We all listen to it together, usually in our editor's bay. They have really nice, beefy speakers. You get the whole experience because we want to hear it the way that you would hear it in a theater, as opposed to like on a phone or on headphones or any of that stuff. That's the way we're used to doing it. Now that we're all work from home, it's a little bit different. We all kind of have a nice little different work from home setup. I have really nice speakers at home. I also have really nice headphones that I've invested a lot on. So when I'm listening to stuff, I'm listening to it in its highest quality. And like we had mentioned earlier, we're always asking for high-res files so we can hear it at its crispest, most beautiful way, the way it's supposed to be meant to be listened to. Because again, you're listening to it on a theatrical sound system. We also go to a sound stage at the end if something goes to finish to mix it in real time. So you're listening to it with beefy speakers. And that's kind of how we do it. With this one, like I said, we really dissected the original song. So with The Sky Had Vanished, we sort of asked for the stems and then listened to the stems individually, figured out what was working for us, and then really worked on that. And then what we did is we worked with an additional composer at Ghostwriter for the drums and added those drum layers to it. The drums, I think we might have done 3 revisions of. And then everything else was just kind of signature sound design elements that we found. I think, to Tony's point earlier, talking about cue sheets, this one was surprisingly not as intense. I think there was maybe like 50 or 60 cues
Only
in it.
50 or 60.
I will say, when I was a coordinator, this didn't even go to finish, but I worked on the first Venom, and I worked with an editor, and it took me 6 hours to do a cue sheet. There was 256 pieces of sound design in it.
256?
256 plus 3 songs, and I will always remember that. Like, that is just ingrained in my head forever. And then the funny thing is we lost the trailer to somebody else, and all that work was for nothing on my end and his end. But this one only had, I think, like 50 or 60 pieces of sound design. But we really honed in on those signature sound elements and how do we really elevate that drone and the pulse and all of that stuff. So with this one, very thankfully, there weren't a terrible amount of revisions. Like I said, there was only 3 or 4. So yeah, it was a good one.
Question. Can I hop on to a point that she made right quick? I think that when we explain make it bigger, a misconception that a lot of people often form is the difference between bigger and louder. All right. Louder is you turning the volume up, which not always recommended. All right. We prefer bigger as in the layering. Like that might mean if I'm looking at, for all the Pro Tools and Logic heads, if we're looking at, your session, you have, a number of different things that all form this wall of sound, as opposed to just cranking the master. You know what I mean? Like the idea of louder versus bigger is very key, because a lot of times some people mistake we want bigger with, now the track is just clipping. You know what I mean? So when we say make it like bigger, that means it likely needs to fill that dynamic range up even more than what's already there.
The importance of being a great mixer cannot be overstated. Like, you have to know if if someone says make it bigger, well, why? And you're like, well, I got a whole bunch of stuff in there. Well, it might not be cutting through. Your cymbals ring outs might be affecting your vocal line, or your rumbling bass is drowning out your guitar or something. And being able to tweak and find make sure your EQ and everything is coming through is so it's so important.
It's vital.
Yeah. To touch on that, like our editors, like I said, they're the ones kind of editing the music in. And when we ask for those stems, we're deconstructing your cue to its rawest form. So to touch on what Brian said, we can make it louder if we want to. We don't necessarily need you guys to make it louder. Like we'll do that in that mix. But if we don't have enough elements to make it bigger, then that's really what's key. And it's not necessarily always just like, okay, like let me just make the drums hit a little bit harder. Think about counter melodies. Counter melodies are your friends. How do you enhance the song that you have to make it feel grand and cinematic without, again, having it clip? And it's kind of coming up with, we want something that's driving, because we only have 2.5 minutes to tell that story. How do you give that song that drive without causing it to clip? and without causing it to sound unfortunately, for lack of better words, just sort of like a straight line. And it sounds annoying, kind of cliche,
That's such a
but
great point.
we're looking for those peaks and valleys because we are trying to tell a story. We're trying to either tell a joke or have a jump scare or, drop really important, heavy lines. And how do we do that with music that just kind of lays flat? Another thing to think about too that's also really important is if you remove your vocals from a song, what does your instrumentation sound like? What does the instrumental itself sound like? Because we're using a lot of dialogue in our stories. So we're usually, like these guys said, focusing on a key lyric. So if we remove all of your dialogue or all of your vocals, whether it's, in a hip hop song particularly, it's kind of that same beat over and over. And it's the rapping and the way that it's delivered that kind of gives it that drive and that swagger to it. But if we remove that, what is left? It's kind of like this repetitive beat. So how do you guys enhance that? How do you add melodies to make it feel grand, to give it driving, and to not make it feel like you're listening to the same thing over and over again? You want that really beautiful signature element that's going to kind of stay throughout the song and just keep on building. And then around that signature element, whether it's a melody or a chorus or whatever it is, adding those counter melodies that are going to really enhance it and tell a beautiful story sonically. Because you guys are also storytellers too. You guys are giving us this emotion to really play with and really enhance these visuals. So how are you guys sharing your story with us as listeners?
I love that.
And we need it yesterday, by the way.
Yeah. So speaking of songs, and maybe this might be a little flex by Mr. Vickers, let's go into the next trailer from the Oscar-winning film. So let's go, Mr. Vickers. Let's.
Oh, am I introing it?
Yes, sir. If you.
Yeah, it's a little film dropped on Christmas last year called Soul. Right. When I first heard we were working on this project, I lost my mind, man. But my editor walks up hey, can you give me this list of songs? I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, oh, Mingus, Bird, Miles, yo, what is this? And it was a moment because as a jazz person, you don't get to place a lot of jazz. You know what I'm saying? It's rare. So when we were first working on this project, we started out with some songs and then we realized, let's take a different direction. As both of them have mentioned, one thing that's vital in our process is working with the editor, the person who's, editing this piece and what it is that they hear and what it is that they see and trying to figure out how we can translate. As supervisors, your job is basically being a mind reader unofficially, and that can be the best or the worst thing in the world because you have to take, hey, I want this to sound like, like a cool, day at the park. And I'm like, all right, cool, day at the park. And we have to just figure out
seems pretty specific.
You know what I'm saying? It's all right, where are we going? But eventually it becomes it's very give and take. It's very, okay, is it this? No, all right, let's try this. Is it this? No, all right, try that. So in what I'm going to show, the funny thing is we worked on this about a year and a half before the film came out, and the spot died for about 5 or 6 maybe longer months. And when I say it died, that means they were like, hey, we're good. Clearly that's kind of what die means. I'm sure you probably picked that up. But yeah, it died for a while. And then one day, magically, our client came back and was like, hey, do y'all still have that piece with, whatever. And it ended up being this.
Disney XR Soul, streaming on Disney Plus December 25th.
Music is all I think about. From the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I fall asleep at night. I was born to play. It's my reason for living. Hello? What the? Wow! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Help! I'm not done! Holy! Oh my goodness!
This week, the council. There's a soul missing.
Is this heaven?
No.
Is it H-E double hockey sticks?
Hell? Quiet coyotes.
No, it's the great before. This is where new souls get their personalities, quirks, and interests before they go to Earth. Here we are.
Don't worry, you can't crush a soul here. That's what life on Earth is for.
Whoa. It's my life. Can you help me get back? Come on.
This won't be a disaster, that's for sure.
You're out there somewhere, little soul. And I'm gonna find you.
Life is full of possibilities. You just need to know where to look. Don't miss out on the joys of life. Like pizza. I can't smell. We can't taste either?
All that stuff is in your body.
No smell, no taste.
Or touch. See?
Okay, I get it.
Disney and Pixar Soul.
Get ready. Your life is about to start.
Start streaming December 25th.
Such a great trailer.
Brian,
so
good. Oh man,
So
I just
Brian-
feel better watching that, man.
Yeah. So Brian, I'm curious as to what made it's so good. What made them first, die and then resurrect? I mean, was there anything did they give you any sort of understanding as to why they changed their mind?
Man, nah.
No breakup letter?
Like it's like, that's the interesting part about this industry, right? Is sometimes things you see it and it might just go out of your mind and then it's back and then it's there. Fortunately for us, again, we had a client who looked at it and just figured, sometimes there's a period where, and we do this too on a daily basis, where you see all these things and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go back to this one. I'm sure some of y'all have worked on tracks and you're like, you know what, I'm at version 47 of this mix. Let's go back and listen at number 3. You know what I'm saying? Like the MJ effect almost, the Thriller effect. But that's kind of what it was. It was a situation where, I guess it stood out enough for, our client to remember that it had been done and to take that approach. So, we're definitely grateful. And in this piece, there was a lot going on. First and foremost, the conversation that we had with the editor was, since our main character is a jazz musician, we want to acknowledge that. We want to, we want it to be a part of the story. And if y'all haven't seen this movie, especially as musicians, it's kind of biased that I'm going to say this, jump, but please see this movie because there's a scene in there where it reminded me of what Linda Perry was saying at the keynote yesterday, where she was talking about like when you can get in a zone and you just create and you don't think about lyrics and melody or whatever. And in the movie, something like that happens, and I'm sure to all the creators out there, y'all feel that where you're just everything kind of stands still and you're just kind of in that moment. So yeah, see the movie. It's good. It's fine. But
the other question, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So right quick, briefly, in the beginning, we did a thing where, the editor heard like some noises, like he wanted to display the city as being the instrument. So he wanted specifically some random sounds. So we go through, libraries and everything to look for those sounds. All right, give me a trash can, give me a this, give me a that. All right, cool. We load all that stuff, and you'll notice that everything's cut to time. That's a very popular, way to edit now. Most of your favorite trailers are probably cut to time at this point. So we did all of that, and then we get to the middle where we become a little bit more emotional, and that's where things begin to turn. And you get what is a Pixar kind of movie, like, oh, they're gonna make me cry. Yes, that's the goal. We are definitely gonna make you cry, but that's why we get to that point. We were working with the library where they initially were gonna release this on hey, here's some music, that they pass out to everyone. They were gonna release it, but we got kind of first dibs on this because they knew what we were working on. So they adjusted it. They beefed up the horns. There's a part in there where the melody is like da, 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 like they're doing that. And instead of that, it was supposed to be a vocal But they figured, you know what? Let's make it. Let's do horns instead, so that way we don't lose any of the dialogue. Because sometimes when there are vocals, that's why we always ask for instrumentals, because we want to hear the music and we don't want to. We don't want that fighting to happen. So, yeah, and on the back end, we just get bigger and bigger. You'll hear that big rise that happens to give us our big climax, because we love big rises.
One of the things, I mean, I love the fact that you mentioned Linda Perry, because one of the things at the keynote that she also did was give you guys as music supervisors a shout out.
She did.
Big time, especially on trailers. And she talked about how she was thrilled to have What's Up used in trailers in a completely different way. And that's one of the things that I also wanted to ask you all about, which is how often is that opportunity? Because, as far as from the trailers that I see, you as music supervisors were pretty much at the forefront years ago as far as doing incredibly cool covers of songs. I mean, you think about The Social Network and, how they did Creep with the chorus, right? And, all the different ways that music supervisors in trailers have basically taken really creative ways. And I think that's kind of an opportunity for some of our audience where they can, again, go to someone like Ruben, or, if there's an interesting version of a well-known song that, again, hits those emotional points that you were talking about earlier, that's something that, I think, is something that they should be aware of. So,
yeah, I feel like the cover is actually never going to die. How the cover is done, though, is going to evolve.
Yes.
And the reason why I think a cover is so important, or a remix, is because when we're trying to sell a film, we're trying to sell it to a very large audience. And what a cover does is it showcases a song that might be older and might hit an older audience, depending, like if we're choosing, a classic 60s or 70s rock song or whatever the song may be. And then we introduce it in a new and fresh way, which also hits a younger, more modern audience. Right. So it kind of gives us this 4-quadrant hit, which is what we're constantly trying to do, is hit these 4 quadrants of different people that we want to market to. And the cover is very, 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 very helpful in that. How it's done, like, everybody kind of makes fun of trailers for doing the dark, haunting female cover.
Yeah.
We've done it a whole bunch, but we're constantly trying to reimagine how to do the cover. Right now, something that's really popular are remixes. And, Silo does really, really stellar remixes. You guys have the album that you guys just came out with, like, maybe a couple of months ago? Like the older...
The Relio stuff?
Yeah, the Relios. It's so stellar. And it just reinvents some classic songs in such a fun way that makes us really excited to use them.
Well, geez, thank you. We never want to do what everyone else is doing, right? That's kind of what my theory is at Silo. It's like, if everyone's doing that, I want to do something new. And before soul was a thing, I went up to my partners and I was like, because I love jazz too. And you know where this is going. I said, I want to do trailer jazz.
We had the conversation, bro. It was hilarious.
And they were like, what? And I'm like, I think it could be really cool. Get these songs that everyone knows. They might not know the name of the song, but they know. So like packing the familiarity of a song that's known with the freshness of doing it a new way. And In the Mood landed in a trailer for Hollywood, and I was super happy that we did a version of Sing, Sing, Sing that landed in a TV spot for Soul. Because when we had our trailer jazz album, and then I heard that Pixar was doing a jazz-based thing, I was like, if I don't land something in this, I'm quitting.
Like, you were a visionary for that, bro. Yeah.
Honestly, great job. You guys produced it so beautifully.
Well, you guys make it happen, so thanks.
It's a teamwork thing, and it really is, and we have to kind of at least stress that. Like, it's not. And while I'm grateful that a lot of people are like, music supervisors are the gatekeepers, I'm like, it's a teamwork thing. Like, it takes having dope editors and a creative team that you work with, but at the same time, that thing can backfire. Like I said, at any given point, a client could come in and say, hey man, my kid was listening to Billie Eilish this weekend, so guess what we're using? It's a thing, y'all. It really is a thing. And we
That
just
happened
have
to me last week, no joke.
See, yeah. Like we all got our war stories. You know?
No shade on Billie Eilish, by the way, but like it's totally true. It's like, oh, you're gonna use bad guy?
Yeah, bad guy. Still fighting a good fight,
oh, man. Because there's a villain in it. He's a bad guy.
He's a
you
bad
get
guy.
it?
That's where I never thought of that.
It's so fresh and new, man.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
The other question I have for you is when you're picking songs that are going to be in a trailer, obviously there are, the trailers need to hit different territories throughout the world. Do you end up changing songs in certain trailers to meet the musical style of that territory, or do you pretty keep it universal as far as like, again, something, if it's going to be, a cover, obviously it's going to be something that's universally known, so you'll probably keep a song like that in. But if you're doing something like Grace, do you change it to represent different territories, or does it matter?
For us, not really. So first of all, I'm going to be very clear. We don't actually license anything. The studio licenses everything. We just kind of handle the creative, and we send off our cue sheet and they negotiate everything. The reason why I know a little bit more about this is because I worked at Extreme and I remember doing these contracts is usually when you're licensing for a trailer, you license for all media worldwide in perpetuity, which essentially means you can license the song. Yeah, in perpetuity means forever. And then worldwide means you can use the song anywhere worldwide. With trailers, there's a very, very big marketing budget, so they're usually able to afford those rights. And the way that kind of works is you have the main trailer. There's usually 3 pieces. There's a teaser, a second trailer, and then the final trailer, and a whole bunch of TV spots and radio spots and all of that stuff. But when you're licensing for that teaser and those 2 main trailers, those are usually the main cues that they're going to pay their big money for. And they want to make sure that they're getting their bang for their buck. So they tend to license it for all media worldwide in perpetuity so it can get reused in different TV spots or when they're dubbing it for international spots. And we're usually able to keep the music. I don't think I've ever had to change any music. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every now and again when we're working in certain territories, if a song might not be as, I don't know. It depends on where it is, to be honest. Like if there is a hiccup like that, maybe it might be a situation where it's like, all right, well, instead let's use something that we've used, on the content side, like doing the behind the scenes stuff or the the featurettes or any of that kind of stuff. But more often than not, yeah, if they're paying good money for this jam, everybody is getting this jam. You know? So
yep.
Yeah.
To piggyback on that, though, something I will mention is we're trying to find the sound of a campaign. It's never the song for the trailer. So when a song is used in a trailer, it kind of becomes void to everybody else. So if Brian were to use a song in a trailer and it's a really awesome song and I want to use it, 10 times out of 10 times, everybody on our team is going to be like, okay, well, this was used in this trailer. We cannot use it because it's already associated with another film. So that's also something to keep in mind. Once a song is used in a trailer, it's kind of dead for us, unfortunately, for any other campaigns.
And is that over a course of time, or is it it's just dead to you?
Just reason.
It kind of depends. I think it's, if it's a really crazy, impactful trailer, sort of how you mentioned Creep and The Social Network, that's something that in the history of trailers, everybody knows, and it's such an iconic use. We probably aren't going to be able to use that for a while.
Right.
Something like, going back to Billie Eilish, that Bad Guy was used in that track, Bombshell. And like that 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. It's been enough time for that now. Like people are actively trying to put that in trailers. And so it's like, it's not forever just no one can use it. I mean, think about how many times you've heard the song Born to be Wild in a marketing campaign.
You're going to hear it again.
You're going to hear it again. It's just like, well, because it takes place in the jungle and there's animals.
It's wild there, isn't it?
Oh, man, it's so wild.
That's a good song.
Yeah. So, like, but Creep is a great example of, like,
yeah, we don't touch it.
I don't think anyone would want it.
Yeah.
Maybe for a Radiohead documentary. But even then, like, I don't even know what.
Also, Radiohead is really hard to license.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. We use Radiohead, guys.
I know you guys.
Wait,
and what?
People didn't watch the movie.
Oh.
Artemis Fowl, but it was a good use.
Yeah, I mean, it was dope. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but yeah, that's the thing too, where, so many times people were like, oh man, I love the trailer and it lied to me because the movie was whack. I'm like, look, man, we did our job.
We did our job.
So, I mean, hey, don't get mad at me.
I'm going to turn it over because we're at the 13-minute mark. So I'm going to turn it over to Lila and just sort of see what the folks online are asking about, if there's anything of interest for them. So Lila?
I'm going to throw it to the audience first because I'm sorting through these questions.
Okay, let's
You can
throw
come back.
out to the audience. Anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
A lot of music that is sound design based music, like compositional sound design. So my question is, what are your thoughts and your approach when you have to deal or receive material that is already based on sound design?
I mean, for me, if a cue already has sound design in it, like that puts us ahead of the game. It's usually a really helpful thing when cues have those signature sound elements, those earworms, those sounds that you've never really heard of that just really perk up your ears. It's always helpful to have sound design in your music. And that's, I think, kind of like where people like Silo come in and they're trailerizing songs and they're not just adding instrumentation that makes it bigger and cinematic, but they also tend to sort of restructure a song and sound design elements that perk up our ears as music supervisors.
We get asked a lot, for a signature. This song has to have a signature sound, whether it's like a or like a so like there's two ways to kind of answer that question. You can make tracks that are just purely sound design based sound beds. It starts off with like a pulse, like a and they'll have like a chugga 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 chugga, and like those tracks, if they hit an editor on the right day at the right moment, they'll be like, well, that's perfect for this movie that trailer that I'm making, and I can make a whole trailer based on this sound bed thing. And then there's the other part of it where remixing a song, and I let me know what you think about this. I never try to like outthink the editor. I don't want to put too much stuff in that the editor is kind of like, well, I don't have any freedom to go to do anything here. I like to drop in like a remix 2 or maybe 3 moments top sprinkled throughout that gives the editor, if the beat is going boom, boom, ga, boom, 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 clack, clack, boom. Okay, so on those clack, clacks, the editor is going to hear that, hopefully, and think, oh, I can cut on the clack.
Yes.
I can show the car, and then on the second clack, I can show the explosion. So, like, it's sound design. Those clacks, those aren't maybe native to the song that I'm remixing, but it's giving the editor an opportunity to hear something and be like, I can be creative with that. But without completely informing the entire remix is like, well, this whole remix is based on just clacks and like, or, a sound design motif throughout.
I think it's like a fine balance. It's definitely a fine balance of kind of having that sound design, but then also, like Ruben said, giving your editor the freedom to create a sound design bed and add, hits, whooshes, rises, bombs, all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. It's as long as you have everything on its own stem, because we get some releases that are sound design led songs, you know what I mean? And it's very helpful. It's very useful. Funny enough, making a statement as the Disney guy, but yeah, we get a lot of stuff with like the gun noises because there's always movies and trailers and stuff that need a lot of gun sounds, not shooting, but like mechanical, like all that kind of stuff. It's always useful. So if that's your aim, like I said, just have everything when you do your stems, just have everything isolated. So if you send things out, people can say, that part's a little too much, but I like this other stuff.
Lila, anything, or do you want to have us go back to our live audience?
No, I've managed to find them. As an emerging supervisor, what can I do to broaden my knowledge base and get situated in the industry?
Ask so many questions. I think that is one of the most important things. that, at least for me, was really, really helpful is I talked to so many different supervisors, and also I just kind of studied what they did. Like Tony taught me a lot without even knowing that you probably did, but just I didn't know that in TV there's bins of like 30 or 40 songs that you're just posting, and learning those kinds of things I think is super important. And also, if you get a job as a coordinator or a music supervisor, I promise you, everything that you thought you knew, that you learned, that you are ready for, on your first day, you're going to be like, oh, I know nothing. So just don't be scared of that. Like if you get a job and you walk in and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I promise you, like, hang out for like a week and it'll all make sense.
Yes.
But everything that you think you know doesn't always apply. But don't be scared of that.
Yeah, I co-sign that entirely. Like I was in the same situation where I got in, and man, when I first got into the trailer world, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I'm 100% literal. I literally went home that night and had nightmares. I had a nightmare like, oh my God, I forgot to turn in this cue sheet and they're gonna fire. Wait, that doesn't exist because you're waking up. Why would you have a cue sheet that you didn't do in your sleep? Yeah, but it's a lot of information. It really is, but it's very doable. And one thing that I always tell people is they're like, oh yeah, trailers, I know that. Like, just literally watch trailers and, you know, comfort level, of course, but if you can see these trailers in the theater, I think personally it is a feeling that is just, you know, it's hard to replicate. Like that Dune trailer in the theater, man, I low-key almost shed a tear. That thing was amazing.
And I have to say, I'm hoping everyone here, after hearing from our panelists, get a real feel for the fact of how much music is in there. I think you'll listen to trailers in a completely different way, and you'll be like, oh my God, here's a cue, here's a cue, here's a cue, you know, and realize how much work you all do, which is amazing.
I just want to say one thing about this question again. I think one thing that a new supervisor can do is to start thinking more about the language of music and how to communicate, because music is just an emotional thing. I don't think I've gotten in bigger arguments than I have with argument of like, that song sucks. No, that song's great. Like, music evokes emotions in people, right? And editors, most of the time, in my experience, aren't musicians. So they'll say, I need this track to be mango. And you're like,
that's good.
And you need to know what he means.
Yep.
By I need this track to be mango. Like you need to decode.
Do you want it to be sweet? Do you want it to be yellow? What does that mean?
So you got to start
like Prince thing to say right there.
You got to start like kind of acclimating your brain to deciphering what someone who doesn't have the music education that most of you probably have or are continuing to like develop. You're going to run into a lot of people as a music supervisor who don't have that and who don't know how to articulate what. I mean, my third day on the job, someone was like, I need this to be the same speed. He didn't know how to articulate BPM. He didn't know what that, I was like, well, I can just tap this out on this Flash-based website and figure out the BPM. And he was just looking at me like I had 4 heads. He's like, what? Like, they just don't, some people just don't know. So being able to be patient and with people who maybe don't have the same knowledge as you guys, and being able to hear what they're saying and translate it into like, oh, so what you really want is you need it not necessarily faster, because they get faster a lot. And it's like, well, you need it to drive. You need it to be to propel us forward, and we can do that by this is the beat. Then we can do like like that's not necessarily faster, but that's what they're asking for. They need something quicker,
ramped up.
Yeah. You do have to. I mean, I agree with all of you because it's not just the music editors; it's the producers, it's the directors. They don't have the musical knowledge. And I remember I had a conversation with John Debney, who's a composer, and he was saying, you know what, the best sort of description of what someone wants, tell me emotion. Tell me what it is you're looking for. Don't tell me, oh, I need to have it in a C minor, because chances are they probably don't know what they're talking about, or they're just learned to play guitar last week, and they're just learning their chords, right? So he said, just tell me the emotion. I can work on that. And it's the same with what you do as, music supervisors and pulling songs. If you know what the emotion is, you'll be able to get what they mean by tell me, give it to me so that I need more mango.
And to give a quick follow up on that, like, man, the one thing I've seen from my time here in Vancouver, the long amount of time I've been here since Thursday, y'all have there are so many different kind of niche things here, man. Like, know your sound and know what it is that you specialize in, and figure out how you can translate that to a cinematic feel. Like, some people don't think oh, well, I do, hip hop. I don't know if that's in whatever. Figure out what that looks like and who's doing that, and figure out, oh, well, I do whatever this sound is. Figure out what it is that you can not only amplify your own voice, but how to make that just unique and fit within that realm, if this is, something that you're interested in.
That's a great point. And the other thing too is to realize we are in you as musicians, as composers, are in a great time, because there's so much content out there, whether it be trailers, TV shows, films, games, ads, that having that unique voice is what these creatives are all looking for. They don't want to have their films, their trailers, their ads sound like anybody else. They want to have something because it's unique to the storytelling. And I think that's what you have to understand, is being able to tell your story through your music. And I think, you each have a story to tell. Own it. Use it. Make it your own, so that someone will find your musical voice and understand how great it is and be able to bring it out to the world.
And do it yesterday, by the way.
Yes, exactly. Do it yesterday. Any other questions?
Yes. How has the industry changed over the past 10 years, with most audiences now watching trailers on their phones and tablets?
That's good.
The quick answer to this is, clearly clients are influenced by what they see other people doing, what they see other houses doing. So it's up to us to just be able to adapt to that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the music is still like the music. We're trying to figure out how to make things still sound cool, sound fresh, and stand out from everything else to grab your attention, because we only got 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I think it's just faster. Everything has to be faster now.
I think that's what it is, our attention span has changed, so it's more so about the storytelling. And with the music, what comes with that is, how do we make it more dynamic, and how do we make it shift gears a little bit quicker than it used to before?
Right. Do we have time for one more question? Yeah, I want to get someone from the audience. So anyone, this lady right here.
Have you ever had an instance where you've actually needed something so specific that you've decided to work with a composer instead of trying to look for music, or has there never been enough time for that kind of thing?
All the time.
Every single day.
All the time.
We were working on, Raya and the Last Dragon, and they were like, hey, man, we need Southeast Asian, bombastic trailerized music. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I got a library for that. So, yeah, we did have to work with one of the houses that we typically do to make a custom track. So, yeah.
It's just about sometimes we'll get a movie that's like, these are dailies or animatics. It's like, this is way far out. But if the editor in that first production meeting has an idea, and there's maybe weeks, there's time. But it's like, if it's Monday and the trailer is due Friday, I don't think it's possible. It's like, quick, good, and cheap. Pick two.
Yeah, I mean, very recently there's a film we're working on that hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say. But we had we had to create an original piece of music, and we were, to you guys, this might sound like a short time, but we had 4 days, which was so luxurious, to create something custom, and because it was a sound that we were trying to explain to different vendors, and it just didn't exist. So I think it happens almost every day. One way or another, we're customizing something.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you. We could not have had a better live panel to start off VIF completely live than the three of you. I'm so grateful to you for sharing your wisdom, for helping to sort of let people understand that what you do is art. And I think it's really important for them to know that what you do is so unique and so valuable. If people have questions, afterwards, please feel free to ask. We'd love to have you do that. And I want to give one last shout out to Rob and the whole technical crew. You guys have been amazing throughout. So I salute you for both what you've been doing for us here and as a live audience, but also what you've been doing with our folks online. So my big thanks to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
guys.
the best shoes in the building. Tony, right here. You guys check
Best
these
shoes in the
joints out?
game.
Woo!
John Fluvog from Vancouver. So, hey, keeping it in town. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Big round of applause, everyone. Come on. Okay. It just brings up a little story. Tony and I were talking to Natasha Dupre, who's a great supervisor here in Vancouver, has put so much money into local artists' pockets, and she told us this story of the time that she had to sub in for a movie trailer supervisor, and she said, she's got pretty dry humor, but she's like, it was the worst week of my life. And it just really resonated to me coming from her, who is amazing soup for TV and movies and stuff, just how difficult a job you guys have. I wasn't saying like your job is like awful or something, but it was literally her saying, I don't know, I can't do this.
We're not working in a coal mine. It's hard, but I think the three of us are all very happy.
No,
It's a good song.
but again, you're artists. And I want that to be known because what you do is really special.
Thank
and
you.
I think that needs to be praised. And I want to thank you two, Brian and Evelyn, because you really helped enlighten me on that first panel for Canadian Music Week. Because I was like, you blew my mind. Just learning about what you do and sort of how different it is from what we do on the film and TV side. And Ruben, your insights have been really great. So I just want to say thank you to you all. You are just a blessing.
You guys have been in Canada for like 2 days, and you're so goddamn nice.
Great, man.
Just happens. It rubs off on you. Anyway, thank you very much again. And honestly, it's so great to have them up here in person and spending that time. Okay, we're not done today. You got like 2 hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours till 7:30 back to Bar None for the Sound Off event, which is really super awesome. And I'm getting texts from this tech team there because all of the sound checks have been awesome. So you're in for a real treat. Lots of great dialogue. Anyway, let's go get some food. And I think it might be raining out there, so keep dry, and we'll see you in a bit.